I don't know how to follow that. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Denise Underwood.
Hey, Denise.
And that's very, very important to say because before Alcoholics Anonymous, it was always important of who I am. Now what's most important is what I am. I have to remember that I'm an alcoholic. So let's get the facts out of the way, and then I can give you my perception of my life, right or wrong. It's my truth. The facts are, I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is November 28, 2000, and I'm a member of the Lakeside group in Garner, although I live in Clayton. And to throw a wrench in that, I'm moving to Greenville next month. I'm very nervous. Usually when I'm nervous, my sponsor always told me, if you ever forget what you're going to say, or just open up the big book and start reading, because sugar, that's you. I had a friend of mine years ago, I was about 6 years sober, send me an email with this story. And I shared it one time right before I spoke, and it kind of helped ease me. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. But got to do something to settle my nerves here. And this is based on a Montana state trooper. In most of the United States, there is a policy of checking on any stalled vehicle on the highway when temperatures drop to single digits or below. About 3 o'clock in the morning, one very cold morning, Montana State Trooper Alan Nixon responded to a call of a car off the shoulder of the road outside Great Falls, Montana. He located the car, stuck in deep snow with the engine still running. Pulling in behind the car with his emergency lights on, the trooper walked to the driver's door to find an older man passed out behind the wheel with a nearly empty vodka bottle on the seat beside him. The driver came awake when the trooper tapped on the window. Seeing the rotating lights in his rearview mirror and the state trooper standing next to his car, the man panicked. He jerked the gear shift into drive and hit the gas. The car's speedometer was showing 20, 30, 40, and then 50 miles an hour, but it was still stuck in the snow, wheels spinning. Trooper Nixon, having a sense of humor, began running in place next to the speeding car. The driver was totally freaked, thinking the trooper was actually keeping up with him. This goes on for about 30 seconds. Then the trooper yelled, "Pull over!" The man nodded, turned his wheel, and stopped the engine. Needless to say, the man from North Dakota was arrested and is probably still shaking his head over the state trooper in Montana who could run 50 miles an hour. Laughter is always good, isn't it? I was born in Raleigh, and I was raised in Clayton, Johnston County. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. They do not have the disease of alcoholism. My parents I guess we were middle class, at times poor. My parents worked very hard, and raised us right. The reason I have alcoholism, I don't know. Everybody wants to question whether they were born with it, whether they just, got it because they just started drinking. I don't know. I'm not into asking why. My parents at one time worked for the News and Missouri Raleigh Times. I'm not sure, some of you probably remember that. The Raleigh Times and the News and Missouri used to be delivered during third shift. It would be in bundles. So my parents would drive in the Raleigh area and deliver those newspapers in bundles, and then the stores would do with whatever they do with them. When they worked third shift, my sister, my brother, and I would stay with my grandparents. And it was usually 5 nights out of the week. there were times that I can still remember laying in bed at night crying, wishing that I wasn't in my own skin. And the only thing that I could specifically remember around 8 years old, 9, 10, somewhere around that area. I had a bunk bed, so I was on the top bunk. And I remember laying there, wishing I was living in a different house, had a different family. I just didn't want to be me. I knew something was wrong with me. I was a tomboy, so I was out in the field, in the trailer park that we lived in. I was out in the field playing football. I played basketball, softball. I was getting dirt on me. I just loved that. Going fishing, loved camping. When I was 15 years old, I dated this guy that moved into the trailer park, him and his sister and his mom, and we became very close, boyfriend and girlfriend. That's when I started smoking, and there's 3 rows of mobile homes, but there was this path in the back near the train tracks where us as teenagers would go back there and smoke. And one Sunday morning, I went out there to smoke, and I know it was a Sunday because the NASCAR race was on, or getting ready to be on, and it had just stormed. We had just had a rainstorm. The only thing that I cannot tell you if it was winter, spring, summer, fall. I don't know. I just know that it had just rained, and I was back there smoking. Well, my boyfriend's best friend came back there, and he attempted to rape me. Now, this is very important in my story. I ran home, and because I was able to kick him off of me, but I ran home. I threw the clothes off of me, put them in the washing machine. I took a shower. Then I went to my boyfriend's house and said what happened. I don't remember much except for his mom bringing me a glass of bourbon and Coke. I've been exposed to alcohol. In fact, I'm going to back up and say that my dad said when I was 2 years old, they had a July 4th party, and my sister and I would take beer cans, drink it, and then hide it in the sandbox. And I told Daddy, that right there should have told you there was going to be a problem with me. Anyway, I'll tell you, the first time that I took that drink, that first swallow, it burned all the way down. I could feel it as soon as it hit my mouth, all the way down to my esophagus, to my stomach, all the way down to the tips of my toes. But let me tell you what happened 5 minutes later, which distinguishes the difference between me and a social drinker. That warm feeling that started in my toes and came back up. That's when I was in control. Get that guy in my face, bring it on. I got this. I don't remember much of that night. I know that most likely I got drunk, was in a blackout, because that's what happens to me when I start drinking. My type of alcohol beverage was bourbon, and I wanted to drink it straight up. At the beginning, I did mix it with soda, but by the end, I just wanted to drink it straight up. For about 5 years, I graduated high school. I didn't drink every weekend. I didn't party all the time. I had my first daughter at 19 years old, and she was born March 2nd. My birthday's March 18th. So I was 19 and then I turned 20. Then I had my second daughter at 22. And I have 2 girls. I didn't have more children. Now, at that time, between Carrie and Teresa being born, I got back into that drinking again. In fact, when I found out that I was pregnant with Teresa, I had started drinking, but I actually put the liquor down. I remember about a year prior to that, my husband said, he worked out of town, and he said, well, if you can't relax, just go ahead and take a drink. And I'm like, I can't drink alone because that's a sign you're an alcoholic, and I don't want to be an alcoholic, so I'm not going to drink by myself. It didn't take much longer for me to drink by myself. I became a violent drinker. We moved from Clayton to Wake Forest and to take care of his family members, and we lived in a 2-story house. And by the end of our marriage, because this was in 98, 99, by the end of our marriage, I believe we were trying to see who could throw the other person down the steps. And the bad thing about it was the girls were witnessing this. He had an older daughter from a previous marriage, my stepdaughter. In my heart, she's my daughter. And it was her that basically raised the girls. So in 99, we split, and I moved to Creedmoor because at that time I was working at Falls Lake. I was a maintenance mechanic. I loved that job. 5 years later, I couldn't do it anymore for physical reasons. So early 2000, those of you remember, January 2000, we had 22 inches of snow. And the only thing I thought I cared about was not food for my girls, not to make sure they had stuff at the house that they needed. No, I wanted cigarettes and liquor. And the stores weren't open. And it was all about me. I would do anything I could to get that drink. I would lie, steal, and cheat. And the women in this room probably know what I mean by lie, steal, and cheat. I would do anything I could to get that alcohol. In the summer of 2000 is when my health started deteriorating. I remember at one point, before my husband and I had split up, I had went to the doctor and told him I couldn't figure out what was going on with my stomach. It seemed like every time I ate, I would get sick. And he would ask me how much I'm drinking. Of course, I lied. And he did some blood work or something. I don't know. But, he came back. I had to go back for the follow-up, and he was telling me that I needed to stop my drinking or at least slow down. And, I literally cussed him out in the doctor's office, and then I left. Well, in 2000, it was getting worse. And I distinctly remember in August of 2000, I started drinking. It was either a Saturday or Sunday, I don't remember. And I literally fell to my knees. The pain was so horrible. I would eat something, I would throw it up. But then after finally getting like a shot glass or a couple shot glasses in me of alcohol, I was fine. Now, typical day, I'll say for the last year and a half, maybe 2 years of my drinking was this. I'd wake up with a hangover. I'd go to work. Being a maintenance mechanic, we would do anything. Electrical, plumbing, carpentry. This particular part of my drinking, we were redoing the shingles on the Rangers' homes. And so I'd had to climb the ladders and get up there and start working on the shingles. And I would get 2 or 3 steps up, and I would be shaking so bad. And you're talking 8:30 in the morning. All I wanted was that drink. So I'd claim I was sick, and I'd go home so I could drink. Those days that I did work all day, I'd walk in, I'd leave work, go by the ABC store, and I told the girls, and the girls always knew this from the time they were babies, we're going to Aunt Betsy's cookie store. And it was so funny because their grandmother would do the same thing. She died of this disease in 99. And when she came out of the store, she had a little pack of cookies for the girls. I was never that smart. So I went by the ABC store, got my 5th of bourbon, drove home, and as soon as I walked in the door, my girls saw that brown bag and they'd go separate ways into their bedrooms. They didn't know if Mama was going to be happy, angry, sad, want to dance and have fun and put on makeup, or want to scream and shout and throw clothes. I mean, I would literally at times go in their bedrooms and throw clothes from their dressers and tell them they had to clean it up. I mean, I was horrible. The time that, from that time, from August until November, I'll be honest with you, that last year of drinking, I don't remember a whole lot. I really don't. I do know that Thanksgiving came up. We were off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I knew when I left work on Wednesday afternoon that I was not going to take a sober breath that weekend. And to this day, I still don't remember what happened that Thanksgiving weekend. I do remember Sunday coming to and telling my third husband, I need help. I can't keep living like this. I had this empty pit in my gut. A black hole is what I hear in AA. It was a horrible way to live, and I still went through the pains with my intestines, with my stomach. It was just horrible. So my third husband and I got married in September, and this was November of the same year. He calls for me to go into detox, and I went to Holly Hill. That Monday morning, that was a Sunday, so that they told him that he could bring me up there Monday morning. So that Monday morning, I woke up and drank 2 beers. Now, I don't drink beer. I just drink liquor. But I drank 2 beers. I had to do something to get rid of the shaking. And later I found out that I hid the beer cans under the girls' bathroom sink. And why I was in there, I have no clue. I mean, I never go in their bathroom. I was in Holly Hill for 5 days. The very first day I went in there, that's when I got introduced to the text, Alcoholics Anonymous. And they told me to read the doctor's opinion. And that frame of mind, all I kept thinking is, my ex-husband's going to take my girls away, and I'm just this bad person. I couldn't comprehend what that chapter was saying. I kept reading it over and over and over. And I don't believe I'm a genius, but I'm okay. I'm not that smart, but I can understand what I read. But it was just hard to comprehend it. In that time, they told me that once I got out, I needed to go to AA meetings. Once I was released that Friday, I already had the meeting schedule, and it was already planned for the next 10 weeks to do that intensive outpatient program, and I did that for 10 weeks. I remember right before I graduated that 10th week, I remember saying to my sponsor, well, they say I'm graduating from this thing. Does that mean I still have to go to AA? I mean, I still didn't comprehend what was going on. I was just, all I wanted to do is just not live that way anymore. I didn't want to feel that emptiness anymore. And I can go ahead and tell you, there are no drugs in my story. None. I am the real alcoholic that the big book talks about. I tried everything to make things easier for me to control my drinking. Nothing worked. So anyway, I started going to an AA meeting in Raleigh at the Camel Club, and I was there religiously. Every day I was there. The meeting was at 5:30, so I would go to work, pick up the kids, swing by, pick up the kids, because at this time we lived in Franklinton. So I went from Creedmoor to Franklinton. I'm going further north. Anyway, so I picked them up, swing down, and go to the meeting in Raleigh. My girls were 10 and 7 when I got sober. Now they're 25 and 22. And I have a granddaughter. but I'll get to that in a minute. And then we go back home, I cook dinner, and we eat. So that went on for 4.5 years. And I worked the steps with my sponsor, and she's exactly what I needed at the time. She would say things like, "This isn't how it feels, this is how it works," because she would hurt my feelings all the time. And then, of course, y'all know the previous speaker who talked about you can't get drunk if you don't take a drink, and all these things that make sense to me sober, but I didn't get it when I first heard it. The biggest thing that helped me was, one, they welcomed me with smile. There was no judging. And when I would talk to someone in private, they would say something about themselves and share their experience that made me feel like, okay, I'm not the only one. Because I really thought I was the only one. Because drinking in my life and the way I was living for all that time, to me, was a normal life. I thought everybody did that. So, my very first midwinter was that January, so I was 60 days, not even 60 days sober when I went to midwinter. Fell in love with it. I'm still green behind the gills, but I kept putting one foot in front of the other. In 2001, it was right after I celebrated my first year of sobriety. The problems that I had, the physical problems that I had, came back. And I bared with it. I kept going to doctors. I bared with it until 2002. I had 4 surgeries to try to fix it, and a lot of it was female related. And then in 2003, I had a partial hysterectomy. And then, and I can go ahead and tell you the total number of surgeries in my sobriety was 21. And that's from the time I got sober up until today. So at that time, between 2002 and 2003, when I was going through all this, I basically lived at my sponsor's house. I stayed with her because her place was so close to the doctor's office, and it was just too much to drive from Raleigh back to Franklinton. That, and she would monitor my pain pills, which is awesome. Let's see, 2006, I moved to Clayton. And we moved there mainly because my parents were both disabled. And I continued to go to meetings at the Camel Club, but I wasn't going to as many as I was going. And then I realized, I changed sponsors, and I realized I needed to go to meetings that were closer to the house. But I don't know if y'all are like me. I don't like change. And I wanted to keep the same routine. By this time, I went from working with the state, and because of the physical issues, I stopped working there, and I started working in the insurance business. For 2 years, I sold it, and then I started working at the service center in Raleigh. It was just a straight Monday through Friday job, an awesome place to work. Then here comes 2006, 2007, my third husband and I split up. I can't remember the exact date. It was around that area. 2008, on my dad's birthday. My dad's birthday is February 20th. I went to the dentist to have a dental cleaning. Just your average dental cleaning you have every 6 months. And I have been going. The one thing about sobriety, you do what you're supposed to do. And I was going every 6 months to get my teeth cleaned. And they had found a spot. And at this time, I'm plugged into AA. I have an awesome home group. Wonderful friends. I mean, I am just, when I first got sober, I just wanted to hang out with guys because that's what I was used to. And then it became, as time went on, I rallied around the women. And right now I just love hanging out with the women. So I had a huge network. So that day I went and had that cleaning done, and he told me that there was a spot. So I went back a couple weeks later and had the biopsy taken place, and he said, well, it's going to be 2 weeks, but it looks like scar tissue, no big deal. So I went back to get the results by myself. I didn't take anyone with me. And he said, well, it looks like it's healing well, but your test results come back no clean margins. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. What do you mean? And it was the C word. And I can tell you, I don't remember leaving there. I don't remember how I drove home. I don't remember. I was hysterical. That started a trend of several surgeries. But I'll tell you that in this process, I had friends bring meetings to me. My sponsor at that time introduced me to an internet website that had speaker meetings, or speaker CDs. So I had everything I needed right there. And the place that I was living in Clayton was right beside my parents. So Mom and Dad were always coming over. I mean, it's funny. I moved there to help them, and they ended up helping me. But God always has a plan. That's the way I look at it. In 2011, things were changing at work, and I would go into work not knowing if I had a job that day. One day I went in, it was on a Monday, they fired 27 people. And I was just in shock. Then some of the units would move back to the home office, which is in Ohio. And it was just a bunch of mess. But anyway, now all this time that I'm going through all this, there was a bunch of changes at one time. I'm still sober. I'm still going to meetings. I went to a meeting one time, and I don't know about a lot of you, but I am very hard on myself. I put myself down. I'm ugly. I'm just put down myself all the time. And I was walking into the meeting, and a woman came up to me, a very close friend, and she said, Denise, I want you to stop. And she was this close to my face, and I'm like, what? And I had been doing it for so long, I think they got tired of hearing it. But that's one thing that I love about a home group. They will hold you accountable. I love it. I didn't like it at the time, but I love it. She said, you need to look in the mirror. And you need to look at yourself like we look at you. And that changed my whole perspective. So from then until now, I look in the mirror like people look at me. I don't look in the mirror to criticize myself anymore. Before that happened, I skipped this part, and it's the most important part of my story. In January of 2009, I was well enough to get to meetings at this point, and I got a phone call. It was a GSR in my home group, and I got a phone call, and he said, Denise, I just wanted to call you and let you know that we may have some issues tonight. And I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? And he said, well, there's going to be somebody there at the meeting that I have a feeling that somebody else may not like. And I said, look, before you continue, we don't need to rehash the past. I said, the one thing that I've learned from the traditions is that it's principles before personality. So whatever issues there are, hopefully it won't come up. We can't project on what's going to happen, but we'll take care of it if something happens. So I proceed to go to the meeting, and the meeting's at 8 o'clock, and I always show up at around 6:30. So I'm there, and I'm helping set up, and in comes the person who called me, and then in comes the person behind him. And this disease, it hurts, it destroys, because I could barely recognize who it was. And when it hit me, it was like a Mack truck that hit me, because it was the guy who attempted to rape me when I was 15 years old. Now, this is what I did. I walked out of the room, because it was a restaurant right on Main Street in Clayton. And I walked right out of the restaurant, and I went and paced back and forth on the sidewalk. And I cried. And I felt like I was 15 again. I was insecure, I was scared, and I called my sponsor. And through the boo-hooing, she finally got what was going on. And she did what my first sponsor did. This is how it works. This isn't how it feels. You get your rear end back in there, and you get in your normal seat, and you help the next alcoholic that's sitting about you. So that's what I did. The meeting proceeded. I can't tell you what the meeting was about, but the meeting proceeded. And see, my God has a sense of humor. The chairperson looked at me and said, "Would you give out chips?" Sure. So I get up there, and obviously with the white chip, I offer the white chip. If you want to join us one day at a time. Now he stood up and started to walk up front. And this is what was going on in my head. How dare you? How dare you think you can get, who do you think you are? I am not giving you a hug. Don't you even think about it. I'm not giving you a hug. As he was approaching me, a bunch of this stuff was going on in that committee upstairs. And the minute he took the white chip out of my hand and I reached and gave him a hug, that's the moment I knew what forgiveness was. That's the moment that I realized my girls forgave me for all the bad things that I'd done when I was drinking. And that was the time it was the moment that I realized how much wrong I have done just to all of God's children. Everything from my past, everything from my fourth and fifth step. And God forgave me. I cried all the way home. Because this wonderful fellowship that saved my life, I tried to keep it from somebody. Because of something that happened years prior. I don't know what become of him. I ask that you pray for him. I continue to pray for him. As we do anytime we pray for those who are still out there. Anyway, in 2011, I had decided that I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go back to college, but I'm going to take night classes so that I can continue working. I still wasn't not knowing what's going on with work, but God's going to take care of it, right? So, my daughter calls me in September, and her husband was on the other line, so they were both on the phone, and I thought they were going to tell me that they were pregnant, but that wasn't it. Because that's what I was hoping for. But she said, "Mama, we know how much you want to go to college. So Josh and I have been talking, and we'd like for you to move to Colorado, and you can go to school and not worry about having to work." So 2 days later, I put in my resignation at the company I was working for. And I drove to Colorado. 26 hours later, I was there. I arrived the very last day of October. And I was there up until, I think, May 1st, when the semester ended. I was so homesick. Now, from the time I arrived there till about March, I was okay, because I was busy. I was enjoying my friends. I was introduced to AA there. Awesome AA there. It's just awesome there. The AA is awesome. The whole meaning of clubs makes sense to me now when I hear people from the West talk about it. But anyway, they never called me Denise when I would walk up, because I still go back and visit, obviously, because Carrie lives there, but they call me North Carolina. So as soon as they come up, they say, "North Carolina's here." So anyway, I was debating at that first semester, I was debating on what to have my major in. I was just doing the core classes, and it was between radiology and sign language interpreting. And one thing about the clubs, if those of you who know how they work in the West, is they have tables and it's like a bar with coffee and snacks or whatever. And I would sit there with the old timers and just play cards. And this one particular day, 3 men walked in, and they were signing, and nobody there to interpret, but they wanted an AA meeting. And that's when I looked up and said, okay, I got you, God. So I came back home in May, and I registered for classes, and I graduated last year in May with the associate's degree. But I will tell you this part, the God of my understanding. The day I went into detox, and it wasn't really revealed to me, this part, until, well, it didn't really make sense to me is what I should say, until maybe 2 or 3 months later, when my sponsor and I were sitting down working, reading the book and talking. But that first Monday when I went to detox, I had a CDO Class A license. And for those of y'all that know about the CDO Class A license, it's zero tolerance. So I would have went to work with a hangover. The following Monday when I went to work, because I was in detox all that week, the following Monday when I went to work, they said, we were going to pull you last Monday, but we need you to go take an alcohol and drug test. And it was at that moment, like 2 months later, it dawned on me, wow. I mean, God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself from the very beginning. The part about making the decision and letting go in step 3 was really hard for me, because the very first time that I walked into an AA meeting, when I saw steps 3, 7, and 11, I'm like, not this one. I'm not going to have anything to do with God. You see, I grew up in the church, and I would walk down to the aisle, I would crawl down to the aisle, I would run down to the aisle, but nothing changed. Nothing in me changed. I still didn't like who I was. But then it was explained to me that it was just a decision. Steps 4 through 9 are the action steps. At that time, I was riding a motorcycle when I first got sober. I learned it, I think I was like 3 months sober. A group of us would go riding on motorcycles, and that scared me. This one particular day, we were at my sponsor's house, and we were fixing and ready to leave, and I kept saying, I'm trying to, I'm trying to let it go, I'm trying to let it go, and just, I'm trying to let it go. And my sponsor got tired of hearing it, and she said, she dropped her keys. She goes, I want you to pick them up. So I bent down to go pick them up, and she says, no, you're trying. She literally stopped me. No, you're trying. I'm like, what? So I go down to pick them up again. She says, no, you're trying. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You tell me to pick up your keys. Why don't you let me pick up your keys? She said, Denise, you either do it or you don't. There's no trying about it. So when I went down to pick up the keys, I did it. And that was one of the first lessons I would say that really helped me to let go. The other one, I really need to share this, is when I was going through all my cancer stuff, all those surgeries, I went to a meeting in Garner, and this old timer there, he was a hoot. And he didn't care about hurting your feelings. Didn't care. I kept saying, why me? Why me? Why have I got to go through? Why me? And I still share this with other people today. He said, Denise, you need to stop saying why. You need to stop asking why. He said, the minute you keep asking why, the minute you're playing the victim. And victims do not recover. And I don't want to be a victim. So I quit asking why. There were many times in that 3 or 4 year span that I've ended up on my knees. There were times that I would lay in the bathtub screaming to God to take my life because I was in so much pain. And all that I know. One, pain is the touchstone to spiritual growth. Because I've learned how to lean on my God. At the hardest times, I learned how to lean on Him. And the other one, there are going to be continuous surrenders in sobriety. I've heard people say that. I've heard my sponsor say that. And it never made any sense to me. The first surrender was me giving up the drink. The next one was a relationship. The next one was whatever. One of them was when my child came up to me and said, I'm moving to Colorado. Yeah, she was old enough, but by this time, all three of us were close. And I still miss her to this day. She's been there forever, since 2008. This past January, I'll probably end a little bit early, but this past January, you know, I have a lot of gifts in sobriety. I could never trade them. Never. I love my sobriety. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. My daughter called me last year in the summertime and she said, Mama, I think I'm pregnant. And I said, well, honey, you either are or you're not. She was boo-hooing like a baby. I don't know what I'm going to do. God doesn't make mistakes. So you're going to call the doctor and make a doctor's appointment and get the due date. So my sister and I had a bet. When I was pregnant with her due date was January 11th. So after she got out of the doctor's office, she called me. Mama, guess when my due date is? I said January 11th. And it was. So this past January, she called me. Mama, I'm in labor. And I was on the way to work. And they already knew what was going on, so I called them and said, headed to the hospital. That was on January 12th. And the baby was born January 13th at 12:02 or 12:08 a.m. And she is a beautiful, beautiful baby girl. And I know that if I was not sober, I would have missed all that. I would have missed all that. I have pictures in my phone when Teresa says, you want to go to Grandma's? She just lights up. And this is at 6 months old. I'm truly, truly blessed and honored. And thank you, Wallace, for asking me to speak. I'm always humbled when I get behind the podium because my heroes stood here. The giants of AA stood here. And sometimes I feel like I'm not worthy to stand here. But then I've got to look in the mirror and look at me like y'all do. About 5 or 6 years sober, when I first came into AA, you know, in the meetings, everybody says, well, that we have free pamphlets in the back. If you want to read one, grab one. Never read them. I was 5 or 6 years sober, and so I just went and grabbed I was at this point was reading The Grapevine, and I grabbed one, and it was AA Member's Eye View. And this sums up me. This one particular part in that particular pamphlet. And if you've not read one, it doesn't matter how many years sober you are, how many days or how many months, grab it. Grab it. Because something in there will touch you, just like the words in the big book. This coming Sunday in the churches of many of us, there will be read that portion of the Gospel of Matthew which recounts the time when John the Baptist was languishing in the prison of Herod. And hearing of the works of his cousin Jesus, he sent 2 of his disciples to say to him, Art thou he who is come, or shall we look for another? And Christ did, as he so often did. He did not answer them directly, but wanted John to decide for himself. And so he said to the disciples, Go and report to John what you have heard and what you have seen. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead rise, the poor have the gospel reached to them. I was taught that the poor in this instance did not mean only the poor in a material sense, but also meant the poor in spirit, those who burned with an inner hunger and an inner thirst, and that the word gospel meant quite literally the good news. Tonight, if any of you were to ask me, tell us, what did you find? I would say to them what I say to you now. I can tell you only what I have heard and seen. It seems the blind do see, the lame do walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead rise, and over again, in the middle of the longest day or the darkest night, the poor in spirit have the good news told them. God grant it that it may always be so. Thank you.